Mr. Dan Kincaid, and I apologize. You're going to help me with that, I hope. So we have Sense Diagnostics making their way to the stage here, and we're going to do a 5-minute presentation. Mr. Matt Roney's right down here with your timer. Okay. This is your clicker. It's the big green button. Yep.
I think I can handle that.
Okay, fantastic. You'll need that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us tonight. It's a great privilege to be here. I met some folks from Traverse City at a Keiretsu Forum meeting about a month ago. They said, hey, you've got to come up and talk to us. Since I only have 5 minutes, I will move fast, but thanks for having us. As we said, I'm Dan Kincaid. I'm the founder of Sense Diagnostics, and until recently, our CEO. As of about 24 hours ago, Jeff Klass joined our company, is now the new CEO, and I'm moving back to my finance and operations role from which I'm better suited. We're developing a non-invasive scanner for serious brain injury, so stroke, traumatic brain injury, things of that nature. It's really a radar for the brain. We use low power radio waves to detect bleeding and swelling in the brain. Who's heard of the golden hour? Anybody? That's the space where we play. There's a strong correlation between getting to treatment soon and having a good outcome. Using our product, we should be able to reduce the time it takes to get people into treatment, saving lives, lowering costs, and reducing disabilities. As I said, we use low power radio waves, about 1/500th the power of a cell phone. Send that through the brain. We can detect anomalies in the brain within about a minute. Display that for paramedics in the ambulance to allow them to take people to the right hospital sooner. And then once people are in the hospital, it acts as a real-time scanner for worsening brain conditions. We're a medical device. We're FDA regulated. The market size globally is about $3 billion a year. About $1 billion of that is the US. Again, our target customers are ambulances and hospital providers. So in America, about 3 million people a year have either a traumatic brain injury that requires hospitalization or have a stroke. Unfortunately, outcomes for these folks aren't good. About 1 in 6 die, and a lot more end up with disabilities that are completely preventable if we had better treatment. Delays occur because people are taken to the wrong hospital first in the ambulance, requiring a transfer, delaying onset of treatment. And then in the hospital, there's no real-time monitor to determine what's going on inside a person's brain. So right now, physicians and nurses wake patients up every hour or two, ask them questions. If the responses get worse, then they go get another CT scan. Problem with that is it basically requires an after the fact, after the damage is done, diagnosis. Ours would provide real-time data allowing sooner action. Why do we think it'll work? Well, we have a lot of pig or animal data and bench data, but most importantly, we finished our first in-human study here last year. This was taking 9 patients with known hemorrhage in the brain, following them over 72 hours to see if they got worse. In all cases, our device agreed with CT scan, which is clinical truth to today. No false positives, no false negatives. So very early data, but very promising data. So this was the hospital monitoring application. We also took that same data set, the first 40-second scan for each patient, ran it against our ambulance algorithm to see if we could see whether there was a bleed or not. In all 9 cases, we were able to detect the bleed. Importantly, from as small as 1 ml, which is not clinically significant in most cases, to as large as 60 ml, which as you can see is a little bit bigger than a golf ball, a deadly type of bleed. We also were able to see a bleed in the brain stem, which tells us we have good coverage of the entire brain cavity. So very promising results. Where we're at now is we're raising a $5 million round to conduct our pivotal clinical study that will take us to market in the United States. We do have to go through the FDA. We are in a relatively short 510K de novo pathway, which means we have to do a small clinical study, about 400 patients. This round will also take us to allow us to start approval work in the EU and to add key staff. Right now, we're over here on this side of the screen. About a year and a half from now, near the conclusion of our clinical study, we'll be raising a Series B round of about $8 to $10 million. That will allow us to launch the first product in the United States, continue to working on follow-up products, and then within about 2 or 3 years, assuming we hit our sales targets, we should have the ability to partner with a large company to take the product to market further or go out and raise a larger capital round. So thank you. I know that was a quick overview, but we'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. Thank you very much.
You do have 5 minutes for Q&A if you're...
Yeah. Questions? Yes, sir.
Majority of strokes are ischemic.
Right.
So how do you guys do on ischemic strokes? Is this
We're actually starting our first in-human trial on ischemia right now. In our gel model and in the pigs, we do see ischemic formation. It is distinguishable from blood because ischemia is a lack of blood flow. And so versus a bleed, we kind of get an opposite sort of signal. So additionally, with ischemia, you get depolarization of ions and things like that that also cause electrical changes that we can pick up.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
How do you see the regulatory approval process from a timeline and a risk perspective?
Yeah, we've had, God, how many conversations with the FDA. We're a class 2 medical device, which means we're moderate risk. We're only putting very low power into the brain. We do have to do a clinical trial because there's no predicate device, if you know what that is. There's nothing else exactly like this. So once we get that trial done, and we just got approval, well, basically agreement from the FDA on our protocol, we have one more final thing we have to talk to them about, and then we'll be able to file that protocol to start the clinical study. The results of that clinical study would justify entry into the market or approval of the product by FDA.
Any application without brain tumors?
Actually, yeah. Let me rephrase that. We do believe so, and the reason is that what we're really picking up is differences in the electrical properties of the tissues of the brain. So a brain tumor, assuming that it has different electromagnetic properties, either because of the type of cells involved or because just the extravasculature you get with some of those, we should be able to pick that up. Now, have we done those studies? No, but theoretically, yes.
What other potential applications have you looked at?
We actually are beyond stroke and traumatic brain injury. The next application will be one in sudden cardiac arrest. So interestingly, there's not a lot of products out there that can tell you whether you're doing CPR correctly, and all of them are geared to the AHA guidelines, American Heart Association guidelines. Excuse me. What we're able to measure, and again, lack of blood flow causes changes in the electrical nature of the brain, and we saw this in our pig experiments. When the pig's heart stopped beating, we saw massive signal change. So if you reverse the clock on that process, you can take somebody from a state of no blood flow to adequate blood flow and see an opposite change in the signal. So that will be the next application. We have some follow-on applications in things like brain tumor, neurodegenerative disease, things of that nature. Question? Concussion's a little bit different. Concussion's a serious problem, don't get me wrong, but it's not life-threatening. Your run-of-the-mill mild concussion isn't life-threatening immediately. The people who invented this were really neurologists and emergency medicine physicians who were trying to get a quick read on what's going on inside the brain. Now, in theory, there might be some application on concussion particularly if you got big swelling or things like that. The concussions you do worry about are the more severe ones, the more severe TBIs, where you get shearing in the brain. So think about somebody's head hitting a steering wheel and bouncing back. When the brain goes like that, you get shearing in there, which causes the bleeding. And that's what can kill you quickly.
We have time for one more over here.
So in regards to post-injury with traumatic brain injury, permanent damage, can it scan to indicate that level? And also, how does it compare to other scan methods?
Okay, so two questions there. First one, in terms of long-term, what you would be, a lot of the recovery with traumatic brain injury is different parts of the brain learning how to take over functions. So I don't know that we would be able to see that. What we're really detecting is structural changes in the brain. Brain's not really going to regrow. So I don't know that we would see long-term impact or be able to measure that. Your second question was, how do we compare to others? Other scanning methods, real quick, 15 seconds. CT is the gold standard. It gives you a nice picture. Because of the wavelength we work at, we won't give a picture, we'll give a map. There are ultrasound techniques that are being used, EEG, things like that. All of them have significant drawbacks. I'll be happy to talk to you more about it, but bore people. Oh, I'm getting the host.
That's my job. Thanks. Thanks, guys.